the thing is that Polanyi's idea of moral inversion is an interesting one, because not only does it say, look, vice is promoted as virtue, which it is. I mean, the 7 deadly sins nowadays, you basically see advertisements for them on the tube, celebrating them. I mean, like if you're a kind of sexually moderate glutton, then you're vaunted as some kind of new model for humanity. Now, aside from the fact that giving yourself to immediate and permanent delimited desire, which doesn't liberate you, but enslaves you eventually. Even the Marxists of the Frankfurt School noticed this. I mean, Herbert Marcuse in his One-Dimensional Man mentioned what he called repressive desublimation, where he said that, what consumer capitalism does, and again, this is a man from the Frankfurt School who would be completely unacceptable to the lefties nowadays. He said what consumer capitalism does in offering you what this endless satisfaction of choices is that it just represses you. It just isolates you in a world of false desires, right? And he called it repressive desublimation. The desublimation bit is the liberation of you from any form of moral prohibition on the satisfaction of your desires. So that's the removal of restraint for what you want. And the repressive bit is, once your face is in the trough, it never looks up. And you just get fatter and die. And that is, in fact, what is happening.
Don't ask questions. Just consume product and then get excited for next product.
So moral inversion has that property of making everything that's bad for you good. But it also, Polanyi said also, moral inversion inspires people with a kind of nihilistic fervor. Now, this is the interesting bit psychologically. Why do people go mad over the current thing? Why 1 minute are they wearing oddly pointed pink hats and the next waving Ukrainian flags, and then the next they're putting their fists in the air for a man who died of a drug overdose after committing crimes? Why do these fervors, why do these manias take hold so easily? Polanyi said that under a system of moral inversion, where there is no wider moral framework to explain human activity or moral reasoning, people will attach intense personal feeling to meaningless events. They are seeking constantly to infuse some event with intense moral significance. And so this is the reason why you see periodic phases of societal madness, or what you might call mass formation psychosis, which was how the lockdown scenario was described, famously or infamously, depending on whether you agreed with it. But the periodic expression of mass mania is related to moral inversion, because once you remove any wider moral framework, people still have a need to attach moral valuing to things. And because they can't routinely locate those moral values, it becomes an intense need. And this is why these movements, despite being based on fantasy, or in fact, it's sometimes being the opposite of reality. For example, the lockdown regime was basically a regime of enforced solitary confinement, which is defined as a means of torture under the Geneva Convention. This was promoted as a public good. It is the opposite of the truth. I mean, it doesn't matter whether these things are true. These are myths. Myths cannot be refuted. And once you combine mythology, these popular myths that are promoted through the media, with an intense appetite for moral significance, you get this furious, nihilistic emotional response where, for one point, there's a brilliant phosphorescent mania about one particular event that on examination has no logical basis. And in fact, its purported celebration contradicts its own terms. So this is another example of the paradox into which Enlightenment reason leads people. It deprives them of the ability to reason correctly about moral events, and therefore leads them into mass hysteria, as well as being susceptible to the fantasies offered by the de-restriction of desire. These are processes that are part of, but not necessarily exclusively of, the technocratic managerial society we have. These are processes that are useful to it.
Yes.
But the idea that we can achieve some kind of liberation through technology is itself a fantasy, and it cannot be stressed enough.